Hey everybody, we're going to wait for Facebook to populate the live feed here in a few minutes, so you get to enjoy watching me pull some papers together for this wonderful update today. Hey Don. Just waiting for things to populate. As we know, there are things, a number of documents were released actually last night from FMCSA, provided some guidance for the agricultural haulers in ELDs. But for the most part, we're going to start off verifying what a lot of people already know is what is the ELD and who does it pertain to. As we all know, December 18th, ELDs will begin being required in all vehicles that are required to do logbooks, minus a few exceptions. And those exemptions or exceptions, however you want to call it, is what we're getting ready to kind of cover again, and then hopefully answer some questions, because there's been a tremendous amount of questions that have come from our previous two videos where we explained quite a bit about the new interpretation from FMCSA on the agricultural hauling, and then also on if you have to have an ELD. I think first and foremost, ELDs are required on a majority of the vehicles that are operating out there. Today we're going to focus on the specific exemptions. So if you look at the exemptions that FMCSA came out in the original part, the very first one is one that actually creates a lot more questions than we've received in our office, which has to do with drivers who use paper rods for not more than 8 days out of every 30 days. Okay, rods is a record of duty status, which is a logbook. So whenever FMCSA talks about rods, they're talking about completing a logbook and a logbook graph. There are a number of exemptions that actually exempt you from being required to have a logbook if you choose to use them. The one that we have received the majority of questions on in the recent couple of weeks, there's technically two, but one that we've gotten quite a bit is operating under the short haul exemption for hours of service. Because remember, ELDs replace paper logs, but if you're not required to do paper logs more than 8 days out of any running 30, you don't have to do ELDs. So when and why do you do logs? Logbooks are the rule. Anytime you're operating a commercial motor vehicle over 10,000 pounds, you are required to complete a logbook. There are exemptions, that being the short haul is the first one we're going to explain. Short haul exemption under the federal definition is that any commercial motor vehicle that starts and stops at the same work reporting location within 12 hours and never leaves an air mile radius of 100 air miles, no matter what, if they're crossing state lines or not, are exempt from having to do a paper log. They can in turn do a timesheet. What we found is many people operating within a short haul radius are still doing a logbook. And those people now are challenged with, do you buy an ELD or do you switch over and start taking advantage of the short haul exemption? And the short haul exemption is just the timesheet aspect. Here are some questions that we've gotten with the short haul exemption that hopefully we can answer. Do I have to take the short haul exemption? Is the first one. No, you do not. Any of FMCSA's exemptions to hours of service, you do not have to take. You can choose to take them, but if you choose to take them, you have to do it correctly. So if you're going to choose to use the short haul exemption for whatever reason, either to be away from ELDs or just not to have to do logbooks, then this is how you do it. To do the short haul, you have to track your hours, and your drivers cannot go beyond, or as a driver, you cannot operate that vehicle more than 12 hours in any single day. So if you start your day at 7 a.m., you have to have that truck back in its place, off, and done by 7 p.m. that evening. So Daryl, I'll get to your question here in just a second. It's a good question, but let me clarify that. Off and done at the end of the day is 12 hours. 5 days a week, 60 hours. That's and technically not 5 days a week, but 60 hours is your max for the week. So it's 512s basically is what you can do. That is the short haul. The question comes in is, do I do a logbook when I'm doing that? No. You keep track of your time. Time started, time ended, total time worked. That time is recorded either on a timesheet in the office or in the truck. You can use the logbook to do it, just don't touch the graph. Because once you start completing a graph up and down for time driving, not driving, that type of stuff, you're actually operating under logbook rules. So, so just focus on that with your short haul, is that you have to have timesheets and you've got to prove your hours. Daryl threw a quick question out there. Short haul is 150 miles. Short haul is 150 air miles for what I know of 2 different reasons. One, if you're operating a non-CDL truck, short haul is 150 air miles. There are CDL and non-CDL exemptions. So if you're operating a non-CDL truck, which is a truck and trailer not more than 26,000 pounds in combination with 10,000 pounds or tow, or a truck that is under 26,000 pounds or over 26,000, those are CDL. Over 26,000 or more than 10 in tow and over 26,000, you're a CDL operator. You're limited to 100 air miles crossing state lines. CDL operations in Illinois is granted 150 for short haul. So that is unique to Illinois. There may be some other states that grant an expansion of short haul for CDL operators, but Illinois is unique that they do grant 150 instead of 100. But if you cross a state line, or if you're operating underneath the interstate, intrastate in Illinois, you're limited to that. So I'm going to try to get back to these questions as quickly as I can, Luke. But as far as enforcement next week, it's going to be all over the board, just like anytime FMCSA changes the rules. What I'm telling you here may not be what an officer down the road will be telling you when he pulls your truck over. So, so next up is
people can't get on; they don't know the instructions.
So, so I had a quick question from my office that if you can't get on, you don't know the instructions. Well, if you're not here, you have to be on Facebook or log on to Facebook to be able to see the live video. If not, we're going to repeat this video on YouTube. So the answer, it'll be back out there on YouTube this afternoon. So for those of you that can't get on, all you have to do is go to our Facebook page and reach out. But hopefully you'll be able to get onto Facebook. So now, back to short haul, because this gets really confusing for a lot of people. When we jump into short haul, and you're used to doing logbooks, you just keep your timesheets. The second question we get a lot with short haul is, I occasionally, like once a week, I have to logbook a day. So when I'm logbooking, you know, do I fit in that 8 and 30 group? Because as we said, we're still on the don't use paper rods for more than 8 days out of any running 30. Do I have to recreate 7 days worth of logbooks? No, you do not have to recreate 7 days worth of logbooks. You do, though, if you're operating under the short haul, have to prove your hours on the previous 7 days, driving or not. So if you're working in the shop or you're not driving but working, you need to make sure that you have a copy of those time cards or that information documented. It does not have to be documented on a logbook. You do not have to create a logbook graph for those days you weren't logbooking, but you do have to be able to provide those hours. So that's something we got out there. We're going to move from short haul at this point in time, unless somebody throws me a specific question. We're going to try and cover a lot. There's a lot of questions out here on this. So the next question I have is drivers of vehicles of pre-2000 vehicles. If your truck is a 1999 titled and registered or older, you are exempt. If you're from ELDs, your conversation is done. So again, 1999 titled, registered or older, you do not have to worry about ELDs. You can log off of this. Life goes on for you just the same. You just do your paper logs. That's it. If you have a glider kit that is equipped with a 1999 or older serial numbered motor, but the truck is registered as a newer vehicle, FMCSA has gave some very gray guidance on this. And in my conversation with law enforcement, the best thing you can do is make it as easy as possible for them at a roadside stop. So if you are the owner of a newer than 1999 truck that has a pre-99 motor in it, and I'm going to specifically address 2000 model trucks here in just a second, because I think I've talked to every single owner of a 2000 model truck tractor in the lower 48 in the last 2 months. If it's titled as a 90 or as a 2000 or newer glider kit with a documented 1999 or older motor in it, you are exempt from ELDs according to FMCSA. Roadside, this is going to be very difficult because many officers are, like in Illinois, considered a level 3 inspector who cannot physically go under the hood of the truck and look for that VIN number to verify. So to make it easy for them, I encourage you to take a picture of the VIN number of the motor that's in your truck, get a printout, a decode of the serial number, and keep that with your logbook, because you have to make it as easy as possible at roadside, because that officer has to make that determination. Literally, FMCSA's guidance to them is they have to make that determination at roadside if you're telling them the truth or not. So the easier you can make it, the better off you are. 2000 model trucks with 99 motors. We do not have clear clarification on that specific question. So I would recommend to you, if you think you're exempt, take a picture of your motor VIN number, get the printout that says it's a 99, carry it in your 2000 model truck, run a logbook and see what happens. Because if you can prove your hours and you're not exceeding the hours of service duty, hopefully the officer that's stopping you will tell you what he thinks. Because between now and April 1st, you will not have any points assessed to your CSA score for not complying with the ELD mandate, and you will not be put out of service if you're written up for that specific thing, for not complying with the ELD mandate. So until FMCSA clarifies what we're supposed to do with 2000 model trucks and 99 motors, it falls under the glider kit guidance, which is it's a newer model truck because it's a 2000 with an older model engine. Will law enforcement accept that? I have no idea, guys, because there isn't clear guidance on the very specific 2000 model. Kimberly asked, do I have to apply for FMCSA for a short haul exemption? Absolutely not. You can take it at any time, as long as you meet those qualifications as a driver, or your driver meets those qualifications, that they return back to the same work reporting location within 12 hours, and they stay within 100 air miles crossing state lines, or whatever the state determines that your short haul radius is. Illinois, it's 150 air mile radius. Jennifer asked, can I explain the 8 and 30 days? Absolutely. This is a question we get a lot, and as we're still on these first 2 exemptions. 8 and 30, you can paper log up to 8 days in any running 30, not a calendar 30, any running 30. So essentially your 30 days starts the first time you create a logbook. From that first logbook event, so if you're running short haul all month and then you've got one logbook event, you take your previous 7 days short haul timesheets and either put them in a logbook on the recommended notes. Don't log it. Don't fill out the graph. Just put short haul in, write short haul in the graph, go down, put time started, time ended, total time worked, so you can carry that time forward. Because any time you spend in the short haul counts towards your 70 hours on the logbook rule. So you've got to be able to prove your hours within that. So the only time Fourth Trucking says, do you have to carry time cards of proof that you're local exempt? Only when you're creating a logbook event. So if you're just saying short haul all the time, you actually do not have to carry that in the truck. But during that time, if you're going to create a logbook event, you either have to recreate your previous 7 days so that you've got records of what you were doing on the previous 7 days. Because essentially what the officer's looking for roadside is to make sure you're not exceeding your 70 hours or your driving time. When you're mixing short haul and logbook, that short haul hours counts against your 70 hours. So you've got to be able to track that. So Fourth Trucking, do they have to carry time cards? As long as they're not creating a logbook event. So if they're creating a logbook event, you've got to be able to provide those hours somehow. So we covered the 2000 models, the glider kits. They're out there, open to interpretation on law enforcement. Law enforcement is just as confused on these rules as we are. Logging anhydrous, Mike, you said logging anhydrous and also win propane exemption. Okay, so anhydrous ammonia, I'll address with the ag supply question that we're getting to here pretty quick on some of the documents that FMCSA put out last night. Just know that because you're hauling anhydrous or you're hauling a hazmat material, you do not have to log that all the time. You can operate, and I'm being very specific here, you can operate on the short haul hauling hazardous material. You just have to meet all the qualifications. Just because you're hazmat, AE, anhydrous, or whatever, does not mean that you have to be on a logbook the whole time. If you're hauling under an exemption, that's a whole different game because you're under an exemption and the exemption rules apply. So model year 2000, pretty confusing. Just keep it into 3 different segments. 99 and older, you're exempt. Life doesn't change. Go on. 2000, model 2000 year trucks, who knows? Try it either way. I'm going to say you're probably going to end up in most roadsides. Officer's going to say you need to have an ELD because it's a model year titled 2000. That's the easiest answer they're going to give you. Try the 99 thing if you can document the motors in 99. It fits within their guidance of glider kits. And of course, glider kits, this is going to be the most difficult part. Try to make it as easy as on the officer as possible. Make sure you get a picture of that VIN so you can prove that it's there. Make sure you can get, even especially if it is a glider kit, you've got glider documents somewhere. I know you do of what you put in there. Try to provide as much of that as you can without, overwhelming the officer just to prove that you are exempt from ELDs. Drivers who conduct drive-away, tow-away operations when the vehicle driven is being a commodity. This typically applies to dealers, actually delivering trucks to and from because it's kind of a one-time event. They're not required to use records of duty status for those operations. Or if you're towing a motorhome or a recreational vehicle trailer with 1 or more wheels on the surface of the roadway. Get this question a lot. Yep. For some reason, those guys are exempt. Congratulations. Don't know how, but you guys are exempt. You've got to have at least 1 set of wheels on the RV or the motorhome touching the ground. As long as you meet that requirement, you would meet the exemption from the ELD mandate. Those are the basic rules for who's exempt from the ELD mandate. Now we get into a little bit deeper of the drivers who use paper rods for not more than 8 days and 30, and we're falling under the agricultural exemption. We talked about this earlier because FMCSA in August changed the agricultural exemption. Personal conveyance, they also issued surely they threw out some stuff on personal conveyance. We'll talk about that here in just a second. The ag exemption came out. They created a 90-day, they said on the 20th of November that they were going to do a 90-day delay for any agricultural haulers over 150 air miles. And to further clarify the request, we did get that last night. The waiver finally came forward last night that points out what they have said qualifies for the 90-day delay. And it is somewhat different than what their November 20th document stated. Their November 20th document wasn't very specific in what they were considering an agricultural commodity. Why is this such an issue? Well, let's look at the map 21, because we have to go back to map 21 to see why this is such a confusing aspect right now. Map 21 changed agricultural exempt hauling tremendously. It expanded to 395 K1, 2, and 3. 395 K1, 2, 3 says that you're exempt from hours of service if you operate within 150 air miles of the source of the commodity, of the source of the product, which is agricultural, in states' harvest seasons. So in August, that's 395.1. 2 was ag supplies, which includes anything agriculture related. So in August, FMCSA comes out and says, hey, I'm trying to find their actual document. let's take a look at electronic logs and hours of service and ag exemptions. Many of you have probably seen this. We probably emailed it to you. But on bullet point 3, they basically completely changed their interpretation of how that ag exemption works for hauls beyond 150 air miles. Quickly to cover it, if you really want to get into details, I covered that in an earlier live video feed. Go down our Facebook page, you can find it. But essentially, FMCSA changed their opinion first. Map 21, the original interpretation was if you haul ag commodities over 150 air miles, you must log the entire event from the start of the run. August of this year, they've come out and said, if you haul ag commodities beyond 150 air miles, you can go 150 air miles from the source of your commodity or ag supply, and then turn on your logbook and run your full 11 hours driving time, 14 hours of on-duty time, on top of whatever you've done ahead of, under the umbrella of the source of the commodity that you're hauling, agricultural commodity that you're hauling. And it doesn't affect your hourly or weekly limits. So major change. Essentially completely changes the aspect of what I call long distance ag hauling. That change therein fine also led to the November 20th document that FMCSA kicked out, so you guys know, talked about the 90-day delay that they were going to do specifically to ag commodities and livestock. Where we're running into problems is from this November 20th document to what they put out to last night as far as the 90-day waiver, which is right here. We're going to talk about that now. They were very specific in the commodities part of what they are granting this waiver for. Original interpretation from many of us, including law enforcement, was basically if you're hauling agricultural commodities, that's the furtherance of ag, that helps in ag production, that can be directly related to the production of agriculture, then you're going to be exempt from the ELDs for 90 more days till March 18th. They tightened that way down in this very specific document last night to basically say we're exempting for 90 days from the ELD mandate only agricultural commodities that are described in 395.2 as agricultural commodities, which in 395.2, right here, you guys can Google that, 395.2, which is definitions in the hours of service, ag commodity means any agricultural commodity, non-processed food, feed, fiber, or livestock, including livestock as defined in Section 602 of the Emergency Feed Livestock Act, which, I've got this over here on my computer, is emergency feed. Let me pull that up. Or livestock, by and large, is called, where did I put that? Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Livestock. I'm going to look over here because I have two screens going on. Livestock is, oops, sorry, that's livestock producer. Where did my livestock thing go? So they have a very specific definition. Here it is. Livestock is, the term livestock means cattle, elk, reindeer, bison, horses, deer, sheep, goats, swine, poultry, including egg-producing poultry, fish used for food, and other animals designated by the Secretary or at the Secretary's sole discretion that A, are part of a foundation herd, including dairy-producing cattle or offspring, or are purchased as part of a normal operation and do not obtain additional benefits under the subchapter. That's their definition of livestock. So that's it. So that is all that is exempted. So basically, raw ag commodities and livestock are technically the only ones that are supposed to get the 90-day waiver, which is different than what everyone has been able to interpret from their original November 20th letter. So that really puts a bind on, seed haulers, fertilizer haulers, because that's actually 395K2 and 3, not 395.1. This is where FMCSA is unfortunately made this extremely complicated for everyone. So James Neff said, so feed like MBM is not included. Well, according to 395.1, no, because feed is actually a supply, which would be 395 1K 2 and 3, which is an agricultural supply that is directly related to the production of agriculture. But feed has its own exemption because of the Livestock Emergency Act of 1988. Agricultural feed gets 150 air mile radius exemption no matter what time of the year. Most people don't know this, but feed gets that exemption no matter what time of the year. So it doesn't matter what state you're operating in. Feed gets 150 air mile radius from the source. So that is confusing as all get out. From my conversations with law enforcement in the last 24 hours, most of them, as long as you can prove your hours and you can prove that you're hauling agricultural commodity, I don't think you're going to catch too much flack. But hey, I can't guarantee, because technically the exemption does not apply to seed haulers. Although that is kind of what the letter of the November 20th indicated, was anything under 395 K123 was going to be exempt. Now they're saying only 395.1 agricultural commodities is defined in 395.2. Yeah, leave it to FMCSA. Isn't this fun? So raw commodities, yes. Fertilizer, ag supply, tractors, gray. But that's it. That's the best we got right now. So, you know, Josh is throwing out a question on Pioneer Seed out of production plants. My thoughts, I think for the most part, and again, you guys, you're getting what you pay for here. So for the most part, if you can prove it's agricultural, I don't think anybody's really going to get too bent out of shape about the 90-day delay. The reason why is because FMCSA came out also in the November 20th letter and stated that you know, they're not going to issue any CSA score points against you for not complying with the ELD mandate. So if you're written up for not complying, it's not going to go against your CSA score. And CVSA has came out and said, we're not going to do anything until April 1st. Both of these won't happen until April 1st. We're not going to put you out of service for 10 hours. So not complying with the ELD mandate doesn't put you out of service for 10 hours. So at the end of the day, you know, this is really a soft enforcement start for the next 4 months. If you don't have an ELD in your truck and you need to have it, then there's really not much an officer can do. I mean, yeah, they can write you for it, but honestly, they're probably not going to write you for it because they know it's not going to go against your score, and they know it's not going to put you out for 10 hours. So they're not going to put you out of service. So they probably won't write you for that. Now, if they think you're smoking your books or doing something wrong, they're going to find something else to put you out on. We all know that. I mean, that can happen. So, but if they're going to write you for not complying with the ELD mandate because you don't have one in your truck because you thought maybe you applied to the agricultural exemption applied to you, but now 3 days before the ELD mandate comes out, FMCSA says, nah, we really don't think it applies to you. I think you're going to be okay, but keep your logbooks. I think the biggest problem that's going to come out of this whole thing is that FMCSA changed the agricultural hours of service parameters, and that's really going to cause you more problems, I think, than not actually having an ELD in your truck until March 18th. So that's really my thoughts on ag supply as far as non-raw commodity issues. Again, it's going to come down to law enforcement. Anytime FMCSA has changed this thing. So Mike says not exempt from ELD, but vans still use exemptions. Still not sure where that goes, Mike, but for agricultural non-raw commodity haulers, I think it's a little bit gray for you on roadside interpretation as far as what's going to happen. So FMCSA, again, they came out with that. You should be able to see it in our Facebook feed that they put out the 90-day waiver. If you're going to use it, print that out, keep it in your truck. It's 10 pages of joyous reading. And the reason it's so confusing is because they actually reference some anhydrous ammonia guidance document and then they just say it's actually for ag commodities and not for ag supply. So leave it to FMCSA to make this as confusing as all get out. Nicole, Illinois' harvest season is considered year-round, so easy. So it's ag season year-round in Illinois, Missouri, and Iowa starting Monday. Right now in Iowa, you are not in any type of harvest season. So you don't apply to the exemption if the officer stops you. If you're operating under ag exemption and the officer's asking for logbooks, one, he should already know what the agricultural exemption is. And two, it should be fairly obvious if you're hauling agricultural commodities, either from your bill of lading or the trailer you're pulling. I mean, there's not too much you can do in a livestock pot other than haul livestock, although I have seen golf carts inside of a livestock pot before. That was interesting. So that is really, if you fall under the ag exemption, you can run a logbook, but you can choose not to. Again, logbook is the rule. Exemptions are your choice. If you choose to do it, you got to do it right. So the confusing thing about ag exemption is it completely exempts you from 395, and that's a whole nother story, and we can talk about that in you can watch my other video and we can talk a little bit more about that, but you're completely exempt from it, and it changes the way it applies. So it doesn't even work like short haul. So the one thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that FMCSA put out for comments is, that's the personal conveyance one. This is the transportation of ag commodities. So they're asking for guidance in their definition. So that's really, that's where we need your help. You guys need to be able to write FMCSA. Again, go down our Facebook feed. You'll be able to see the documents I posted last night. We got them as soon as we put them out as soon as that. So, Jason, so did Pioneer Bag Seed get the extension 90-day? Technically, I'm going to say no. But, FMCSA waited till 3 days beforehand to tell everybody no. I think it's going to come up to the officer on the roadside. No, they didn't get the 90-day extension. So everybody assumed that from their November 20th, that basically all ag commodities were going to be exempt. Anything that would qualify under 395, the ag exemption for hours of service would qualify for the 90-day. That in turn is not the case. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, guidance document talking about 394. This is the reason they delayed it. They wanted to talk a little bit about the source. And I wanted to just kind of make sure you guys understood under the background. They're requesting for guidance, meaning you can write FMCSA and give them how it affects you. But the very unique thing about when they ask for guidance is you have to address what they're asking for, or they throw out what you write. So the guidance document says it doesn't apply to farm supply. The focus of the guidance is limited to the transportation of ag commodities. It doesn't address farm supplies for ag purposes. Under 395, K1, 2, or 3, given the applicable range of the latter two provisions is specifically addressed. Basically what they're saying is the agency would interpret the exemption, 150 air mile exemption for ag commodities for distances up to 150 air miles from the source, regardless of the distance between the source and the final destination or place of delivery. Once the driver crosses the 150 air mile point, however, the driver would be subject to hours service rules for neighboring trailers. We're going to cover this whole document probably next week because it gets really complicated. And I want you guys to be able to address specifically what they're asking for. Just know the next 90 days, this is where they're asking for your help in explaining the ag exemption and how it applies to hours of service. Jeremy, your question didn't, if you're on ag exemptions, it didn't finish off. So personal conveyance. This is another big issue that we get a lot of questions on with the ELD mandate, is what is our personal, how can we use personal conveyance with a commercial motor vehicle? Personal conveyance really gets complicated whenever you're using an ELD. Because basically personal conveyance hasn't been changed since about 1997. And for those of you that can't count, that's 20 years ago. And basically personal conveyance from their original guidance, which is current guidance right now. They have proposed new guidance, but under personal conveyance right now, They say when a driver's, I'm going to read this. This is question 26 under section 49 CFR 395.8. Is if a driver is permitted to use a commercial motor vehicle for personal reasons, how must that driving time be recorded? When a driver is relieved from work and all responsibilities from performing work, time spent traveling from a driver's home to his or her terminal, normal work reporting location, or from a driver's terminal to his or home may be considered off-duty time. Similarly, the time spent traveling short distances from drivers' en-route lodging, such as terminals, motels, restaurants, vicinity of such lodging, is considered off-duty time. Type of conveyance used from the terminal to the driver's home, from the driver's home to the terminal, or to the restaurant's vicinity would not alter the situation unless the vehicle is laden. Driver may not operate a laden CMV as a personal conveyance. This is the problem that comes in with the new ELDs and personal conveyance. The personal conveyance in 1997 was written specifically for tractor-trailer combinations. It doesn't address single-unit trucks, box vans, box trucks, pickups that, cross the line and become commercial motor vehicles when they're pulling a trailer. So this is where it really gets confusing, because if you use a personal vehicle in your business, how do you track those personal conveyance miles whenever that ELD is in it all the time? So they have proposed some new guidance, and these really are probably the guidance that they're proposing. I read through it this morning and last night. Most of what they're proposing has been the common sense way that good law enforcement has allowed the industry to use personal conveyance. But currently, personal conveyance is very limited to an unladen CMV, commercial motor vehicle, and specifically it's really just for, if you're out on the road, you can drop your trailer. You have to drop your trailer, which that doesn't really work if you're hazmat or anything else. You can't really leave that alone. So really the old personal conveyance rules don't apply. Most law enforcement I've ever talked to, they typically use what is written in the guidance today, but there may be some specific issues. So I'm not going to read that through you because we're already 35 minutes in, and I don't want to confuse you, because what they're putting in guidance isn't the rule right now. So, okay, so back to a couple of questions here. On the ag exemption, can you start your paper log after 150 air miles? Yep, that's exactly what they're saying. So as long as you're operating within 150 air miles of the original source, you do not start your paper log until you hit that imaginary line from your source, not your home terminal. Home terminal does not apply anymore to the ag exemption according to their new interpretation in August. It is strictly from the source. Home terminal doesn't mean anything when you're talking about the agricultural exemption. So for a driver operating under the ag exemption for the first few hours or whatever, as long as you're within 150 air miles of the commodity, then you're going to have to you can run hours of service exempt. Once you hit that imaginary line, you start your logbook. Big question: when you start your logbook, where do you put your inspection? Because every day you start a logbook, you got to do your inspection first 15 minutes or the last 30 minutes, however you do it. Where do you put your inspection? You don't. You already did it. If you better have done it. You're operating under the ag exemption when you started your day if you're very near if you're within 150 air miles. So if you're not logbooking, you don't have to write down your inspection. The inspection is not part of hours of service. The only reason it gets included on your logbook is because when you're operating under logbook rules, you document everything you do that day. So that's a big question we get. You still have to do it. You just don't have to show it on your logbook on those days you start out ag exempt, and then you cross over and you go into your hours. You just start your hours where you start them. For a part-time driver less than 8 days and 30, does he need to carry anything to prove that he hasn't driven more than 8 and 30? No. Roadside, they can only ask for today plus the previous 7 days. So all you have to do is provide the previous 7 days timesheets of time worked or time spent driving, however it works out. If you had a logbook day in there, you got to include just the previous 7 days plus today. That's all you have to do the 8 and 30. If you're an owner-operator, doesn't run more than 150 air miles, you could fall under exemption, but he is for none of the, Sarah, I don't know. If he's an owner operator and he doesn't run more than 150 air miles hauling ag products in a state that has a harvest season, again, this harvest season, the ag stuff, I think we need to address that in a later video, so you guys can write some guidance to FMCSA on it. There is possible, Sarah Olson Smith, that he could be exempt from having an ELD if he stays under the 150 air miles and operates in a state during its harvest season only under the ag exemption. You should be okay. None of the ELD devices have a spot on for MAP 21. Jeremy, you're probably right. There are some pretty good ones out there, but they're not perfect. Because they've messed with the MAP 21 rules, it's hard for a lot of the ELD manufacturers to get their heads around it because they changed them. They literally changed them in August. So a lot of the ELD background programming was written before they changed the ag exemption rules in August. So no, there's not a real good device. That's why actually FMCSA says you can turn it on and then you turn it back, or turn it off and then you turn it back on. You annotate the miles. It's not fun. It's not going to be fun. What's the best way to prove time while under the ag exemption? Best way to prove time under the ag exemption: have some type of dispatch document, either in writing or bill of lading, or load or trip sheets. If you don't have any, you can't get a dispatch document, you can't get a bill of lading, your IFTA and IRP sheet mileage. That's the best way you can do that. That's going to be the best way to handle that. Jeremy, you're right. Big Road is one of the ones I do tell people to consider. They're working, say they're going to have something after the first of the year. You say Keep Trucking does too. Good for Keep Trucking. I know Omnitrax is also working on it. Those are the Omnitrax, Keep Trucking, Geotab. I'm not promoting any of these, but these are the ones people have came to me and said, this is what we're going with, and they're dancing in and out of the ag exemption. So take that for what you will, but I'm not for it. Dennis, are wreckers exempt if you don't go more than 150 air mile or 100 air miles? Yeah, you're exempt if you stay. If you operate under the short haul. If you're doing a logbook because you're out of time, no, you can only do it 8 days out of 30. But wreckers are not exempt. They are not exempt unless you operate under an exemption. So, any other questions we got out there? I'm going to check my email real quick while I got you guys here to make sure nobody bopped one in there. So we're good there. Don't think I have any on my email. Again, ELDs come in on the 18th. What are drivers supposed to have with them? That's spelled out pretty specifically. I mean, mainly a couple of final questions. What if I don't have my ELD and I've ordered it? Grab a receipt, put a receipt in each one of the trucks. Keep your logbooks up to date if you require logbooks, and provide the officer with as much information as you can. I think for the most part, as long as you can prove you've ordered them, they'll be good. Now, there's still going to be officers say, "Hey, you known about this for 2 years? What are you gonna do?" So, hey, Joe, yeah, we talked about personal conveyance. Right now, it's under the old interpretation. We did cover that a little bit, so you can go back and check that. So that's what we've got. Now I lost my train of thought. Sorry. I hate it whenever I'm looking at these Facebook feed because you guys keep popping up good questions and I can't ever keep up with them all the time. So, but if you've ordered your ELD, you don't have it yet, carry the receipt, keep your logbook records as accurate as possible, or your, whatever you need to do to comply with hours of service, and try to provide as much information to the officer as you can. That's gonna be good to go. Joe Reiner, if I'm operating under short haul exemption, I go to switch paper in the middle of the day. Where do I start my log? If you switch to a paper log, if you're operating short haul and you find out you're either going to exceed your 12 hours or not return back to the same work recording location, then you have to go back and recreate a log for the entire day. I know that kind of sucks, but from the moment you find out, you're not going to be able to claim short haul for the entire day, you have to go back and create a log event for your entire day. So that's the best you can do. So that is what you're supposed to do if you have to start a logbook event for the 8 and 30. Dennis, we may have to talk about your question a little bit later. Send me a PM. You know, I know a lot of drivers are pretty nervous about what's going on out here as far as, you know, what they're going to expect for enforcement this next week. It's going to be all over the board, guys. We're going to have some really good officers out there that are about safety, that are going to be very okay with those people that what are termed the 8 and 30 guys, that are trying to figure this out. I think this is why there's a soft enforcement. There are going to be officers out there that are just going to be, this is the law and this is the law and I'm going to write you up on it and there's nothing we can do about it. Unfortunately, FMCSA led a lot of these exemptions and application of these exemptions up to interpretation. That's why we've been trying to do these videos to get some guidance out there. At least try to help you do the right thing as much as possible, because this is such a confusing arena, you know, such a confusing change for a lot of people that dance in and out. If you logbook all the time, this is pretty cut and dry for you. This really shouldn't be as a big surprise, shouldn't be as a big issue. I mean, okay, it is a big issue. We agree. Until they fundamentally fix hours of service, and the 10 hours off required racing the 14-hour clock, it's a whole nother, we could all sit and have a drink and talk about that for hours. But that's really gonna, you know, this, if you're ELD all the time, this is good. So Rod Smith, yeah, you've yeah, map 21, turn the ELD off. Yeah, I've actually answered a lot of that in my earlier video. Yeah, you can physically, the FMCSA says right there on the document, turn it off, don't run it while you're under the umbrella. Just remember it's from the source, has nothing to do with where your home is. So keep an eye on the source of your commodity if you're going to claim the ag exemption. Keep an eye on your record keeping process if you're going to claim short haul. Make sure you record keep short haul correctly. And then that's going to be it. CMV, Matthew, I don't know where, will not allow an IOU on ELDs on a phone interview with landline. I'm sure they won't. There is no such thing as an IOU with law enforcement. If they write you up on it, though, it's a fine, because it's not going to put you out of service. If they write you up for not complying with the ELD mandate, they're not going to put you out of service for 10 hours, and it's not going to go into your CSA score. They're going to have a note in your file, so they'll have a note. So they see you come through, they're probably going to check you again. But if they write you up on it, it's a fine. It's like a seatbelt ticket without really getting a seatbelt ticket or a moving violation. But each state's going to handle this differently. So I don't know what they're going to do. It's, you know, the same as the last time they changed hours of service on us. It's going to be difficult at times. So there's going to be officers that are going to be, this is the law and that's it and this is it. You know, we hope that officers out there are looking for safety, and they know that this is a big change for some carriers, many carriers, and that the change is difficult to understand, and there's going to be things lost in interpretation. And until FMCSA gets some clarity and everybody gets a little time under their belt using an ELD or not using an ELD and doing it right, and you know, it's going to be a rough go out there whenever you're on a roadside, depending on the officer. You know, you need to try to do your best to make it as easy as possible. You know, I don't think getting confrontational is going to help anybody. I think we can tell you that anytime in a roadside, that's not going to help you. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get any better. You can absolutely try to explain your point as nicely as possible, but you know, law enforcement is going to interpret the law the way they are at that time. You know, I've asked a dozen law enforcement officers on many of these questions we've answered today, and I've gotten 14 different answers. So this isn't going to be fun starting Monday, but let's all stick together. If you guys have any additional questions, any thoughts, comments, please hit us up on Facebook or send me an email, send me a note. We'll do our best to get as many answers as we can to you. But good luck out there. Be safe and have a Merry Christmas. Thank you.